Imagine a father so desperate that he's ready to sell his own daughter. But just when darkness seemed to win, an African maid stepped forward and did something that left everyone speechless. What she did changed not only the girl's fate, but the meaning of love itself. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching? The evening sky glowed with the last blush of sunlight, melting into shades of amber and blue as a soft wind whispered through the broken windows of a small wooden house. Inside, Eleanor sat beside her father's worn-out chair, gently rubbing his calloused hand. His face, once strong and proud, was now a map of sorrow and exhaustion. For months, Thomas had searched for work, but misfortune clung to him like a shadow. The little money he had saved was gone, and the debts had grown heavier than his conscience could bear. Elena, only 16, had learned to hide her hunger behind a smile. She spent her days collecting leftover vegetables from the market, helping elderly neighbors, and mending clothes with the needle her late mother once used. Every night, when her father coughed himself to sleep, she prayed quietly, asking for strength rather than miracles. But the darkness was growing. The debt collector had come again that morning, a man with sharp eyes and a cruel grin. He had stood in the doorway, his voice dripping with threat. 2 weeks, Thomas. That's all. Either pay what you owe, or I'll take something else in return. He left, kicking dust into the small yard as if marking territory. Thomas had said nothing all day. He sat in silence, staring at the fading flame of the lantern. His mind replayed every failure, every rejection, every hungry night his daughter endured because of him. A voice deep inside whispered that he was useless, that the only way to save himself was to do the unthinkable. By nightfall, a knock broke the silence. Their neighbor Patrick entered without waiting for permission. He was a sly man, known for his dealings with strangers who offered jobs for young girls in the city. He looked around the dim room and smirked. "Still struggling, Thomas?" he asked, his tone falsely sympathetic. "I might have a solution for you." Thomas looked up, weary and desperate. "What kind of solution?" Patrick leaned closer. "A wealthy family in the city is looking for young helpers. They pay good money. You could send Elena for work, at least until you get back on your feet." Elena froze, her hands tightening around her sewing needle. Her heart pounded at the mention of being sent away. She glanced at her father, hoping he would refuse. But Thomas said nothing. Patrick continued, his eyes gleaming. "They'll provide food, shelter, and a decent wage. You'll even get an advance payment. Think about it. It could clear half your debt." When Patrick left, the house felt colder. Thomas sat motionless, lost in thought. Elena's voice trembled as she spoke. "Papa, I can work here. I can clean the school or sell flowers by the road. Don't send me away, please." Thomas's eyes filled with tears. "You deserve a better life than this, my child," he whispered, though the words tasted like lies. In truth, the thought of money had already planted its poison. That night, Elena cried herself to sleep, clutching her mother's old scarf. She didn't know that outside, under the moon's pale light, Thomas stood in the yard, shaking hands with Patrick. A paper was exchanged, and a promise was made. The next morning, Thomas told Elena to pack her few clothes. "It's a good opportunity," he said, avoiding her eyes. "You'll work for kind people, just until things get better." His voice cracked under the weight of guilt, but desperation silenced his conscience. They traveled by bus toward the city, the landscape changing from dry fields to tall buildings that seemed to touch the clouds. Elena stared out the window, her reflection pale and uncertain. Her heart ached for home. The smell of earth after rain, her mother's lullabies, her father's laughter before sadness took it away. After hours on the road, they reached a large gated mansion. Thomas hesitated at the gate, unsure of what to say. A woman in a simple uniform opened it. A maid with warm brown skin and eyes that carried the calm of someone who had seen both pain and beauty in life. Her name was Amara. Amara's first look at Elena pierced her heart. The girl's small frame, her trembling hands, her silence, it all spoke louder than words. "You must be here for the job," Amara said softly. Thomas nodded quickly, avoiding her gaze. Yes, this is my daughter Elena. She's hard-working, obedient, and needs employment. Amara led them inside, where the air smelled of polished wood and lavender. Mr. and Mrs. Lewis, the owners, were kind but distant people. They asked a few questions, most of which Thomas answered nervously. Eleanor's voice barely rose above a whisper when asked if she wanted to work there. "Yes, sir," she said, even though her heart said no. After the interview, Mrs. Lewis smiled gently. She seemed sweet. "Amara, please show her the quarters and help her settle. We'll finalize arrangements tomorrow." Thomas exhaled in relief. "Thank you, madam. I'll return tomorrow," he said, though in truth he planned never to come back. As he left the mansion, his steps were heavy. Guilt gnawed at him, but greed whispered louder. The advance money Patrick promised was already waiting. He told himself this was for Elena's future, but deep down he knew it was a sale, not a job. Inside the servants' quarters, Amara watched Elena unpack her small bag. The girl placed a faded photo of her parents on the bedside table and sat silently, her eyes lost in thought. "You miss your home?" Amara asked softly. Elena nodded. "My mother used to say the sun always rises again after the darkest night. But I can't see the sunrise anymore." Those words struck Amara's heart like an arrow. She sat beside her, her voice warm and steady. "Sometimes, child, the sun hides only to see who has the courage to wait for its return." Later that night, while everyone slept, Amara found Thomas's signature on a crumpled piece of paper left near the gate, a paper that looked nothing like an employment agreement. Her instincts told her something was wrong. She tucked it away, deciding to keep an eye on Elena until the truth came out. In her small room, Elena prayed again, whispering into the darkness, "Please, God, send me someone who won't leave me alone." Little did she know that prayer had already been answered. The woman sleeping just a few steps away, the quiet, strong-hearted Amara, was about to change her fate forever. Morning sunlight slipped through the lace curtains of the servants' quarters, casting golden shapes across the room. Elena stirred awake, her eyes swollen from the tears she had shed in silence the night before. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then the scent of polished wood and lavender returned to her senses, reminding her that she was far from home. Amara was already awake, humming a soft tune in her native dialect as she folded clean linens. Her presence filled the room with a calm strength. When she saw Eleanor sitting quietly on the edge of her bed, she smiled gently. "Good morning, little one. Did you sleep well?" Elena nodded faintly. "Yes, ma'am," Amara chuckled. "No, ma'am, please." "Just Amara. You and I are equals in this house, remember that." Her words carried a warmth Elena hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time she smiled back, but beneath that small smile, fear still lingered. She didn't understand what had truly happened the day before, why her father had seemed so nervous, or why he hadn't looked her in the eyes before leaving. Downstairs, the mansion came alive with the quiet rhythm of morning. The cooks prepared breakfast, the gardener trimmed the hedges, and the Lewis family's little boy, Oliver, chased his wooden airplane across the lawn. Amara guided Elena through her duties, dusting, polishing, watering the plants. But she noticed how the girl flinched whenever someone raised their voice, even in laughter. At noon, Mrs. Lewis called Amara into her office. "Is the new girl adjusting?" she asked. Her tone was kind but distant, like a woman accustomed to running a household, not nurturing it. "She's a good child," Amara replied, but frightened. "I think her story is not what it seems." Mrs. Lewis looked up from her paperwork. "What do you mean?" Amara hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Her father said she's here to work, but I saw something strange, a paper with his name on it. It wasn't an employment contract. It looked like a transaction." Mrs. Lewis frowned. "That's a serious claim." "I know," Amara said softly. "That's why I'm not rushing to judge. But I'll keep an eye on her. Something tells me this girl has been sent here for reasons beyond her understanding." Meanwhile, Elena wandered into the garden during her short break. She knelt by a bed of marigolds, their orange petals glowing under the sunlight. A small butterfly landed on her hand, its fragile wings fluttering. She smiled at it, whispering, "At least you're free." Unbeknownst to her, Amara had been watching from the balcony. That moment, so innocent, so pure, filled her with a deep sense of protectiveness. She remembered her own daughter, lost years ago to illness, and how helpless she had felt. Perhaps fate had brought Elena into her life for a reason. That afternoon, a commotion broke out at the main gate. A man in a dusty jacket argued with the guard, his voice filled with irritation. It was Thomas. He claimed he had come to check on his daughter, but in truth, he was here for the payment Patrick had promised once he confirmed Elena was staying. When Mr. Lewis came to the entrance, Thomas quickly shifted his tone, smiling nervously. "Good afternoon, sir. I just came to make sure my daughter is settled in." Mr. Lewis nodded politely. "She's doing well. You've raised a respectful young lady." Thomas forced a grin. "Ah, thank you, thank you. If you ever need anything, sir, I'm available." His voice trembled slightly as he spoke. Inside the house, Amara stood at the top of the stairs, watching the scene unfold. Her instincts screamed that this man's intentions were not as fatherly as he claimed. When Thomas finally left, she noticed him slip a small envelope into Patrick's hand outside the gate. That sight confirmed everything. That evening, Amara sat in her small room, staring at the crumpled paper she had found. It was written in hurried handwriting, "Advance received. The girl will remain in the city. Payment due upon confirmation." Her heart sank. She whispered to herself, he didn't send her to work. He sold her hope. She knew she couldn't confront Thomas directly. It would only make things worse for Elena. Instead, she sought the counsel of Mrs. Lewis once again. This time, Mrs. Lewis listened without interruption, her expression turning from concern to quiet outrage. "Call the child here," she said after a pause. Elena entered timidly, clutching the hem of her apron. Mrs. Lewis spoke softly. "My dear, you can tell me the truth. Did your father explain why you're here?" Elena's eyes filled with tears. He said, "It's just work. But I think he doesn't want me back." Her voice broke into a sob she had tried for days to hold back. "I don't understand what I did wrong." Amara knelt beside her, holding her hand firmly. "You did nothing wrong, child. Sometimes people lose their way, but that doesn't mean love is gone." Mrs. Lewis placed a comforting hand on Eleanor's shoulder. "You'll stay here as long as you need. You're safe now." That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Amara stepped outside under the moonlight. She called her cousin, who worked at a local women's welfare office. "There's a child here," she said quietly. "I believe she was trafficked under the guise of employment. I need help, but it must be done discreetly." Her cousin promised to send someone in the morning. Amara hung up, her heart racing. She looked toward Elena's window and whispered, "Sleep peacefully, little one. Tomorrow, justice will begin to rise." The next day dawned bright and warm, but the house was restless. Thomas had returned again, more insistent than before. "Where's my daughter?" he demanded at the gate. "I need to speak to her." Amara stepped forward before the guard could respond. "Is she safe inside?" she said calmly. "You should leave." Thomas's face darkened. "Who are you to stop me from seeing my own blood?" Amara stood her ground. "A woman who knows what a father's love should look like, and this isn't it." Her voice carried the weight of truth. Thomas's confidence wavered, but anger quickly replaced his shame. "You think you know me? You don't know what I've been through? I lost everything. I had no choice." Amara took a slow step closer, her eyes steady. "We all lose things in life. But a man's worth is not measured by what he's lost. It's measured by what he refuses to destroy." Her words struck him like a blade. Before he could respond, Mrs. Lewis appeared with a social worker and a local officer. The situation was about to unravel in ways Thomas hadn't expected. Realizing that his secret was collapsing, Thomas tried to flee, but the officer stopped him gently. "We're not here to punish you," the man said. "We just need to understand the truth." As the conversation unfolded, Amara took Elena's hand and led her back inside. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered. "Let the truth speak for itself." From the window, Elena watched her father being escorted away. not in handcuffs, but with dignity, his head bowed in shame. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but they were not only of sadness. Somewhere deep inside, she felt the faint beginning of forgiveness. That evening, as the sun set behind the mansion, Amara sat beside Elena once again. The air was quiet, except for the gentle chirping of crickets. "Do you know what I believe?" Amara said softly. "That sometimes God doesn't send us miracles from the sky. He sends them in human form, through people who care." Elena looked at her, her voice small but sincere. "Then you're my miracle." Amara smiled, brushing a tear from the girl's cheek. "No, child. You're the miracle. You survived what was meant to break you. And now we'll build something beautiful from your courage." The moon rose high above the house, bathing the garden in silver light. For the first time in months, Elena didn't feel like a burden or a prisoner. She felt seen, protected, loved, and somewhere in the distance a broken man sat under the night sky, realizing the depth of his sin and the greatness of the woman who had saved his daughter from his own despair. He whispered her name into the wind, Amara, and promised himself that if life gave him one more chance, he would find redemption. The following week unfolded in silence and tension. The Lewis mansion, usually filled with the hum of quiet order, now carried a fragile stillness, as if every wall was listening to secrets it could not repeat. Elena spent her mornings helping in the kitchen, but her thoughts often drifted to her father. She didn't know where he had gone after the officers took him away. Part of her wanted to hate him for what he'd done, but another part still remembered the man who used to carry her on his shoulders and sing off-key lullabies when she was little. Amara noticed the conflict in her eyes. Each day, she tried to fill the girl's silence with kindness, simple gestures like braiding her hair, teaching her how to make tea the African way, or telling stories from her own childhood. Slowly, the cracks in Elena's heart began to mend, though the scar of betrayal still glimmered beneath her smile. One evening, as the sun began to set, a letter arrived at the mansion. It bore no sender's name, only the mark of the local rehabilitation center. Amara opened it carefully and read the short message inside. "Thomas Rivers is undergoing recovery and moral rehabilitation under church guidance. He has requested permission to see his daughter once, to ask for forgiveness." Amara sat quietly for a long moment, the letter trembling in her hand. She knew this day would come. Forgiveness was the final bridge between pain and peace, but that bridge could only be crossed by Elena herself. When she showed the letter to Mrs. Lewis, the older woman nodded thoughtfully. "If you think the girl is ready," she said, "then she should be given the choice, not the obligation." That night, Amara found Elena sitting by the window, gazing at the moonlit garden. "A letter came for you," she said softly, handing it over. "From your father." Elena's hands trembled as she unfolded the paper. Her eyes raced across the words, each one a wound reopening, yet also a chance to heal. Thomas had written in shaky handwriting, "My child, I am not worthy to be called your father. I lost myself in fear and greed, and I hurt the only soul who ever loved me purely. If your heart can bear it, let me see you once. Not to defend myself, but to thank the woman who saved you and to beg for your forgiveness." Tears blurred Elena's vision. "He wants to see me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "But why now? Why after everything?" Amara placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Because guilt can silence a man's heart, but repentance gives it back its voice. You don't owe him forgiveness, child, but perhaps forgiving him will set you free." The next morning, under a pale sky, Amara and Elena traveled to the rehabilitation center on the outskirts of the city. The building was modest, surrounded by gardens tended by the residents. As they entered, the scent of paint and flowers filled the air, a place where broken lives were slowly being repainted with hope. Thomas sat on a bench under a jacaranda tree, his figure smaller than Elena remembered. His beard had grown, his clothes were simple, but his eyes, those same eyes that once looked upon her with pride, were now heavy with remorse. When he saw her, he stood up shakily. "Elena!" His voice cracked. "You came." She didn't answer at first. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear nothing else. Amara stood a few steps behind her, silent but steady, like a pillar of courage. Thomas took a hesitant step forward. "I can't ask you to forget, but I need you to know. I didn't sell you because I stopped loving you. I did it because I stopped loving myself. I believed I had failed you and that you deserved better. I thought money could fix what I broke." Elena's eyes filled with tears, but her tone was calm. "You were supposed to protect me, not trade me for promises. Do you know what that felt like?" Thomas bowed his head. "Every night I see it in my dreams. The moment I handed you over haunts me like a ghost I can't escape." For a long time no one spoke. The wind rustled the leaves, and a bird called softly from the distance. Then Elena took a step closer. "You hurt me more than anyone ever could, but I don't want to carry that pain anymore. I forgive you, Father, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." Thomas broke down completely. He fell to his knees, clutching his chest, as tears streamed down his face. "Thank you. My daughter, thank you." Amara turned away slightly, her own eyes glistening. She had witnessed countless sorrows in her life. But there was something sacred about this moment, the quiet power of forgiveness. The rebirth of a broken bond. The following days brought a calm Elena had never known before. She returned to the mansion lighter, her steps softer, her laughter easier. Mrs. Lewis, who had watched her transformation with silent admiration, offered her a small scholarship to continue her studies. "You've got a mind and a heart too precious to waste," she said kindly. "Use both, and you'll change more lives than you can imagine." Elena was speechless. For the first time, she saw a future beyond survival, a future built on purpose. One afternoon, while helping Amara with laundry in the garden, Elena asked, "Why did you help me when you didn't even know me?" Amara smiled faintly. "Because once, long ago, someone helped me too. I was young, frightened, and far from home. A stranger took me in, taught me to believe in myself. When I saw you, I saw that same lost girl. And I promised myself I'd never walk away from another one like her." Elena looked at her, admiration shining in her eyes. "You saved my life," Amara chuckled softly. "No, child. You saved yourself the moment you chose to forgive." As the weeks passed, Amara continued to check in on Thomas. He was working at the church's carpentry shop, slowly rebuilding not just furniture, but his own soul. He had begun helping other men recover from addiction and despair, using his story as a warning and a message of hope. "If my daughter can forgive me," he told them, "then no man is too lost to find his way back." One Sunday, Amara brought Elena to the church to attend a community gathering. When they arrived, Thomas was there. Surrounded by children, he was teaching to carve wooden toys. He looked up and smiled, not with guilt, but with quiet gratitude. Elena smiled back, her heart finally at peace. After the event, the three of them shared a simple meal outside under the shade of a mango tree. For a while, no one spoke. There was no need to. The air itself seemed to hum with forgiveness. Thomas looked at Amara and said, "I'll never forget what you did for my daughter. You saved her when I was too blind to see her worth." Amara shook her head. "I didn't save her. I just opened a door. She chose to walk through it." That evening, as they parted ways, Thomas handed Elena a small wooden bird he had carved himself. "It's a reminder," he said softly, "that freedom doesn't mean forgetting where you came from. It means choosing where you'll fly next." Back at the mansion, Elena placed the wooden bird on her nightstand beside her mother's old photograph. She traced its smooth wings and whispered, "I'm free now, Mama, and I'll make you proud." Amara watched her from the doorway, her heart swelling with pride. She knew the girl she had once met trembling in the shadows had become someone strong enough to walk in the light. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it the faint scent of rain and redemption. In that moment, Amara realized something profound. Sometimes God doesn't change the world with miracles. He changes it with people who refuse to give up on love, no matter how broken things seem. And that night, as the rain began to fall softly over the city, Elena dreamed not of fear, but of hope. Her life had begun again, not as a victim of her past, but as a survivor who had found her purpose through the compassion of a stranger who became family. A full year had passed since that stormy chapter of Elena's life, yet its memory lived like an old scar, no longer painful, but still visible enough to remind her how far she had come. The Lewis mansion now felt like a home instead of a workplace. The hallways that once echoed with silence now hummed with laughter, with the rhythmic sound of her footsteps mingling with Amara's soft humming in the kitchen. The girl who had once arrived, trembling and voiceless, was now a young woman filled with confidence, grace, and quiet wisdom. Each morning, Elena helped Mrs. Lewis prepare breakfast before heading off to her classes. She had earned a scholarship at a local school for underprivileged girls, where she studied literature and psychology. Her teachers described her as gentle, yet unbreakable. A girl who listened more than she spoke, but whose every word carried meaning. Sometimes, when she was asked to write essays about heroes, she never mentioned famous names. Instead, she always wrote about a woman named Amara, the maid who had seen light in her darkness and taught her how to believe again. Amara, too, had changed. The woman who had once lived quietly in the background had become something of a mentor within the Lewis household and the neighborhood beyond. She had started an informal group for young girls who came from difficult homes, teaching them simple life skills and giving them the one thing that poverty often stole: self-worth. Mrs. Lewis often said, "Amara, you were born to lead." But Amara always replied with a humble smile, "No, madam. I was born to serve with love." One bright Saturday morning, while the aroma of freshly baked bread filled the kitchen, a familiar knock sounded at the door. Amara looked up from her work, her hands still dusted with flour. She opened the door to find Thomas standing there, dressed neatly in a clean shirt, holding a small box in his trembling hands. His eyes were calm, different now, like a sea that had finally learned to rest after years of storm. "Elena," he said softly when she appeared from behind Amara. His voice carried warmth this time, not fear or guilt. "I didn't want to come without being invited, but I thought maybe it was time." Elena's heart skipped. She hadn't seen him in months. For a second, memories of the past flickered in her mind, the hunger, the betrayal, the goodbye at the gates. But then they faded, replaced by something deeper. Forgiveness had already done its quiet work. "Come in, Father," she said gently, stepping aside. They sat in the garden, surrounded by marigolds, her favorite flowers now fully blooming, their orange petals glowing under the sunlight. The same place where she had once whispered to a butterfly about freedom now witnessed a different kind of peace. Amara brought them tea but didn't stay. She understood that some moments were meant for two souls to heal privately. Thomas placed the box on the table and opened it. Inside was a small, beautifully carved wooden frame. Within it, a photograph. One he had managed to restore from their old home, of Elena as a little girl with her mother, both smiling in sunlight. "I found it while repairing the church's storage room," he explained, his voice trembling. "It was covered in dust, but I couldn't throw it away. I thought you should have it." Elena's eyes softened. She touched the photo carefully, as though it might disappear if she blinked. "She would be happy to know you're better now," she whispered. Thomas nodded, his eyes misting. "I still think about that night every day. How close I came to losing everything that truly mattered. I'll never forgive myself completely, but I'm learning to make peace with the man I'm becoming." Eleanor looked at him quietly. "You don't have to earn forgiveness, Father. Just keep being better. That's enough." For the first time in years, they smiled at each other without pain between them. Amara watched from the kitchen window, her heart swelling. There was something sacred in watching broken things come back together, not in the same way, but stronger at the seams. Later that afternoon, the Lewis family gathered everyone for a small celebration. It was Amara's birthday, though she hadn't planned to make anything of it. Mrs. Lewis, however, had secretly arranged a surprise with Elena's help. The servants, gardeners, and even the children from Amara's community class were there, carrying flowers and homemade cards. When Amara entered the garden, she froze, in disbelief, as a chorus of cheerful voices shouted, "Happy birthday, Mama Amara!" She laughed, a deep, joyful laugh that brought tears to her eyes. She had spent her life serving others quietly, never asking for acknowledgement, yet here she stood, surrounded by love that was genuine and overflowing. Elena handed her a small wrapped gift. Inside was a simple bracelet, made from thin golden thread, with a charm shaped like a small bird. "You once told me freedom isn't about forgetting where you came from," Elena said. "So I made this for you, to remind you that your kindness gave me wings." Amara's lips trembled. She took Elena's hand and squeezed it gently. "And your courage reminded me why I chose to stay in this world and not give up. You gave my life new meaning, child." The afternoon turned into evening, filled with laughter, songs, and stories. Even Thomas stayed, helping to serve food to the children, smiling shyly when they thanked him. For the first time, he felt he belonged somewhere again. Amara noticed the way he looked at his daughter with quiet pride and deep humility. She saw in him the proof that even the most damaged hearts could heal when shown compassion instead of condemnation. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Elena stood beside Amara, watching the sky turn shades of pink and gold. "You know," she said softly, "a year ago, I didn't believe people like you existed. I thought kindness was a fairy tale." Amara chuckled gently. "Kindness is never a fairy tale, my dear. It's just rare because people forget how powerful it is. But when you choose kindness, even when life breaks you, you create miracles." Elena nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "Then I want to be like you, Amara. I want to help people who think their lives are over." Amara looked at her, pride filling her gaze. "You already are like me, and someday you'll be even greater." Months passed, and Elena's promise turned into purpose. With the support of the Lewis family and Amara, she began volunteering at the same rehabilitation center where her father had found peace. She listened to stories of women and children who had suffered, guiding them gently toward hope. Every time she looked into their eyes, she saw her younger self, and she knew exactly what to say. Her voice, once fragile, became a beacon for others. One afternoon, during one of her visits, she saw her father teaching carpentry to a group of boys. He waved when he saw her, and she smiled back proudly. That moment, the daughter who had forgiven and the father who had changed, was proof that love, once broken, could still bloom again. When she returned home that evening, Amara was waiting on the porch, rocking slowly in her chair. "How was your day, little bird?" she asked with a smile. Elena sat beside her, resting her head on her shoulder. "It was beautiful," she said softly. "Every time I help someone, I feel like I'm giving back a piece of the love you gave me." Amara closed her eyes, a peaceful smile spreading across her face. "Then my work is done." The two sat there in silence as twilight deepened around them. Fireflies danced in the garden, and the distant sound of laughter floated through the warm night air. It was a simple scene, but within it lived the essence of everything they had fought for: love, redemption, and the courage to start again. When the first star appeared in the sky, Elena whispered, "You were right, Amara. The sun always rises again after the darkest night." Amara nodded gently, "And it shines brighter for those who never stopped believing." The camera of life would have faded out there, a picture of two souls, one who had been saved and one who had done the saving, sitting together beneath a forgiving sky. Their story wasn't about wealth or tragedy. It was about the power of one human heart choosing goodness when it could have chosen silence. And so, their lives became a quiet testimony that sometimes the greatest miracles are not loud or sudden. They are born from the softest acts of compassion. For in saving one girl, Amara had unknowingly saved many, proving that kindness, when given freely, can rewrite even the most broken destiny.